So a beginning of ending the confusion would be to review what Our Lady said at Fatima, begin to implement it. You'd receive graces. You'd be able to tell the difference between truth and error, and you wouldn't be confused. What is the message of Our Lady? Number one, she said, pray the rosary every day. If you pray the rosary, the war will end and there will be peace. You remember when the rosary used to be preached in the schools? You remember when the nuns used to wear rosaries on their habits? Now they don't even wear habits. One of the very first things that disappeared from the habits of the religious, rosaries. Kids aren't taught about the rosary today in most instances in schools. Priests today, many of them, mock the rosary, make fun of it. And yet the rosary was given to us by God through Mary as a spiritual weapon. St. Dominic said, one day through the rosary and the brown scapular, the world will be saved. So we're suggesting that you begin in bringing about an end to your confusion by kneeling down every day before a statue or picture of our Blessed Mother, taking your rosary in your hand and praying that rosary. Not racing through it in 5 minutes. Say the words slowly, meditate on the words, think of the mysteries of the rosary, and do it as a family. What's happening to the young people today as they go off into their schools today and get brainwashed in most of the schools? Brainwashed. They can't pray in school, but they can be taught by some atheist. Or they can be told by someone that their relatives were baboons centuries ago and they all of a sudden evolved into men. We live in a terrible age, especially for the little children. If the parents don't teach the children the truth at home, they won't know the truth because they're not being taught in school. We pray every day that the school system will crumble in this country, and maybe the kids will have a chance. I've talked to thousands of young people, teenagers and kids that go to public school or modern Catholic schools, and it's the same garbage. It's the exception, it's not on dope. It's the exception, it's not involved in sex. They're being told these things are normal. Again, a beginning would be the rosary. Make your children pray. You don't ask the little 4-year-old if he or she wants to pray. You make him pray. You teach him how to pray. Secondly, our Blessed Mother said, my son wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. Why should we honor the Blessed Virgin Mary? Because she's our mother. And God wants us to honor her. One of the easiest ways to prove that these new religions cropping up are satanic, whether they use a Bible or not to prove their point, is what they have to say about the Blessed Mother, most of them. We run across these individuals continually. Nothing in the Bible about the Blessed Virgin Mary. Don't have to have any devotion to Mary. There's only one mediator between God and man. They go on and on and on with their biblical quotations. Do they actually think they're going to be rewarded by Christ for mocking his mother? Or they can have pictures of the Beatles and they can have pictures of all these weirdos, but they can't have pictures of the Blessed Mother. Doesn't make sense. The 4th commandment says, honor your mother and your father. What about those that say, well, all you need is Christ. All you have to do is imitate Christ, which is true. Why don't you love his mother the way he did? Christ is our brother, right? With a big B. He's God. He's the Son of God. We became children of God when we were baptized, adopted children of God. So we are brothers. If we're brothers, we have the same mother. And St. Louis Marie de Montfort goes so far as to say, in the degree that we honor the Virgin Mary, we don't adore her, we honor her as the mother of Christ, who is God. And in the degree that we do honor her, God will give us the graces we need to be able to persevere. In the very first page of the Bible, it says there will be enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed. And the woman is the Virgin Mary. Christ doesn't have to battle with the devil. He's God. But Christ commissioned Mary, his mother, to be the one who would crush the head of the serpent. And Catholics were always taught about the importance of devotion. to the Blessed Virgin Mary. In the catacombs, we've been there 3 or 4 times in Rome. You can see paintings that were put there by early Christians depicting the Virgin Mary being assumed into heaven. So again, devotion to Mary goes way back to apostolic times. The brown scapular is our sign of consecration to Mary's Immaculate Heart. Again, it is a sacramental. And you remember the promise, if someone is enrolled in the brown scapular, fulfills the conditions, and dies with the scapular on, they will not suffer eternal fire. So that's number 2, devotion to Mary and her Immaculate Heart. And lastly, regarding what Our Lady said at Fatima, the solution, she showed the children a vision of hell, and she said, "Here you see hell where the souls of poor sinners go. There is no one to pray and sacrifice for them." And she asked the children if they were willing to sacrifice. The sacrifice that she was seeking is called the sacrifice of daily duty. Now, what does that mean? If you call yourself a Catholic, you must believe something. If someone came to you and said, "Why are you Catholic?" you went, "I don't know." Not a too good Catholic, are you? If someone says, "Why are you Catholic?" you should be able to say, "I am Catholic because I belong to the church that Christ founded. I believe he was the Messiah. I obey the commandments of God. And I obey all of the teachings of the church. There are rules and regulations to live by. I am going to live according to those rules and regulations. Therefore, that is why I'm a Catholic." Supposing you say that, then that means it doesn't matter what country you're from, what language you speak, what age you live in, you're going to live according to those rules and regulations. Along came the miniskirts and the hot pants and the pants and the shorts and the see-through blouses and the sleeveless dresses and the tight, immodest fashions, and they're being worn by Catholics. You don't have to go to the beach to find immodesty today. Go to the local so-called Catholic church. It's right there. Nuns dress immodestly today. Why did not the Catholics rebel and say, "We're not buying those styles and fashions because they're immodest and they're immoral"? Gee, what will people think? What's going to happen if people wind up in hell because of being concerned with what people think? God is going to judge you, not people. When Lot and his wife lived in Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot and his wife did not live like pigs like the rest of the people did. The rest of the people were destroyed, and Lot and his wife were rescued. When Noah was alive and was living a life pleasing to God, and God told him to build an ark because he was going to destroy everyone else, Noah was not concerned with the way people lived. He obeyed God and built his ark. And when 8 people were floating on the ark, everyone else drowned. Because again, Noah was concerned with God's will, not people's will. And there are so many people today that worry about what other people think about them. Do you have the courage to live your daily duty as a Catholic? There's a Catholic way to think, a Catholic way to speak, a Catholic way to dress, a Catholic way to act. And if everyone thinks you're weird, that's their problem, not yours. Because again, God is going to judge you, not people. You wonder why today there is so much sex, unwed mothers, prostitution, girls getting pregnant at 13 and 14 years old, sins of impurity being committed, the crimes of violence in regard to sex. It's unbelievable. Today you turn on the TV set, you go to the movies, you pick up a newspaper, you read a magazine, and you see there filth, you see nudity. It's an occasion of sin to turn on the TV set today. Even when they have sports, they have the half-nude cheerleaders there. It's to the point that now when you hear the word girl or woman, you think of sex automatically. That's how it's been reduced. And we hear so much today about so-called equality. You know, it sounds a nice sounding word, isn't it? Equality. When it comes to the role of the male sex and the role of the female sex, there is a difference. God made Adam and Eve different. Sure, you know that. And He gave to man a role to fulfill, and He gave to a woman a role to fulfill. But using that word equality, listen to what the enemies of God have done. They're taking the woman out of the family, putting her into an unnatural role, telling her she can do whatever she wants to do. She's just like a man. She can dress like a man and talk like a man and act like a man. And in the meantime, families go to pot. Women dress like men today for the most part. Well, what's wrong with that? In the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5, it says, "It is an abomination in the sight of God for a man to dress like a woman and for a woman to dress like a man." So you argue with God if you don't agree. Do you want your teenage daughter on the basketball team with the boys, or on the wrestling team with the boys, or on the football team with the boys, or going into the boys' restrooms? That's what it's getting to. If that's what you want, you have problems. If you're not concerned with your girls, your daughters, do you have the courage to stand up and not go along with what the mob is going along with? That's part of your daily duty. Our Blessed Mother was not a man. She was a woman. She was feminine. She acted like a woman. She fulfilled her role. She wasn't a slave. She was a housewife. She cleaned house. She cooked. And she cared for her spouse, St. Joseph, and our Divine Lord. And there was a time when Catholic women used to identify with our Blessed Mother, their model. Unfortunately, today, that's not the case. If you were to go home and get rid of your shorts and pants and immodest clothes and styles and fashions and start wearing long dresses and long skirts and loose-fitting clothes, your neighbors and friends would think you had a nervous breakdown. What in the heck is she doing anyway? How come she dresses that way? You know, you can walk around nude, no one says anything. But you cover yourself and you stand out like a sore thumb. I remember when one woman asked that of one of our friends at the lecture, and the one that was dressed modestly says, "I want to. What business is it of yours? You don't like the way I dress? Don't look." Would you rather walk around half nude and be an occasion of sin to every man that passes by and have to stand before God and answer for being an occasion of sin? These are just a few things we're mentioning. But why don't Catholics dress like Catholics today? Because again, I think they're too concerned with what people think. You could go through every single phase of society and everything you do, especially your entertainment. Again, the TV, the movies, the bars, topless bars, X-rated movies. In every major city, there's one or two places with X's all over the adult movies. Go in and damn your soul by looking at those movies. In a lot of the cities, the motels, they advertise, we have X-rated movies now in the motel room. So go to the motel room and damn your soul. Remember, we're supposed to be trying to save our immortal souls. And the devil is having a heyday today, convincing people to get wrapped up in filth and pleasure and sex and avoiding doing that which is necessary to save one's soul. You know what it says in the Bible regarding salvation? The gate is narrow, and few there are that enter therein. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. The gate is narrow, and few there are that enter therein. And the reason he had to say those words is because he knew that, unfortunately, most people would not do what is necessary to save their souls. They're too busy doing other stuff. And that's right. They're too busy doing the wrong thing. If someone prays a little bit, their friends probably call them fanatics. You could sit home on a weekend and watch 10 football games. No problem. People won't think you're weird. You're normal. Like everyone else is. Like sports today has become a god. We were just in a place where a mother had to race her son, who was about 10 years old, to the basketball game and pick him up and down and race him to the place where there's a hockey game. running around like maniacs trying to get their little kids who can barely walk, get all involved in sports, and they don't have time to pray. I wonder how many of those children are going to be side by side with their parents in hell, cursing them for all eternity for not having loved them enough to teach them how to save their souls. Too interested again in glory. Read the lives of the saints. Read the life of Christ. It's all laid out there in the Bible. Christ was not very popular with the world. Oh, but today Christianity has become some kind of a popularity contest. You know, there used to be a time when non-Catholics hated Catholics. I've heard many non-Catholics say, gee, isn't it nice the way the Catholic Church is finally waking up, coming around to our way of thinking? I don't think it's nice. It's a tragedy. Those are the three things that our Blessed Mother asked for, basically. The rosary, devotion to her Immaculate Heart, the sacrifice of daily duty. And if you did these three things and persevered, and began to investigate what we've said regarding Vatican II as opposed to the way it was before Vatican II, you would come to the conclusion, and you'd be able to prove it, that either what I'm saying is right or it's wrong. If what I'm saying is wrong, then you'll find that out in your investigation. If you don't investigate, again, I repeat, you can't make an honest statement in that regard. Well, I'm sure some of you must be saying to yourself, wonder what the local bishop thinks about what he's saying. Or I wonder if the Pope agrees with what he's saying. Well, if the local bishop agreed with what I was saying, I'd be in the local church talking. The reason we're not is because we're attacking what the local bishop and what the local priests are doing. They are teaching a brand new religion. I don't remember how long ago it was, but in the diocese right here in Omaha, in the cathedral, there was some Episcopalian priest that was so-called consecrated a bishop in a Catholic cathedral. Now, the Episcopalian priest is a layman that wears robes. They don't even have valid orders. So here they have Catholic bishops and Catholic priests in a sanctuary letting a heretic use their church. What about the Pope? What does he think about what we're doing? As a Catholic, I believe that Christ instituted the papacy, that St. Peter was the first pope, and that popes are infallible. When a pope preaches, or teaches rather, I should say, to the universal church on matters of faith and morals, he cannot teach error. It has never happened, and it never will happen. It cannot happen that a pope in the Catholic Church ever teaches error and leads people into heresy. That's the uniqueness of the Catholic Church. In the other churches, every once in a while they have a vote, you know, and if the majority believe that which was wrong becomes right, then it becomes right. But again, in the Catholic Church, that's not the case. We have had bad popes in the Catholic Church, and the term bad pope is used to define an individual who was a true pope, but who was immoral. There have been popes who have lived sinful public lives, have had illegitimate children. And this is a tragedy and it's a scandal. But in spite of the fact they were bad popes, they never preached or taught to the universal church error and heresy. They can't. Now, a pope does have the power to loosen and to bind, as it says in the Bible. When Christ gave to St. Peter the keys of the kingdom of heaven, he said, what you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you loosen on earth will be loosed in heaven. And that means that the Pope has a right and he has the authority, he has the power to make laws. Eating meat on Friday, not eating meat on Friday, the fast before communion from midnight on, or 3-hour fast, establishing holy days, all of the canon laws that must be obeyed by the priests or by the bishops. A Pope has the right to do this. And when he dies, another Pope can change it. But again, remember, there is a difference between that and the truth, that which is basic, intrinsic truth. A pope can't change the truth. Rather, a pope condemns error, explains the truth, defends the truth. A pope can't destroy the sacraments. He must safeguard the sacraments. Now, I remember explaining this when Paul VI was alive to some man who asked me about what Paul VI thought about what we were doing. And when I explained it, his comment was, if popes can't teach heresy, how come this one is? And then he sat down. And what he said was true. I couldn't deny it. I could have said, wow, is it that late already? We'll say 3 Hail Marys and go home and avoid answering the question. But that question that he asked is a question we can no longer avoid. The decrees of Vatican II have 3 basic heresies in them. That which deals with the sacraments, that which deals with the catechisms, and that which deals with interfaith. These 3 areas in the decrees of Vatican II are completely contrary to past teachings of the Church. Paul VI signed the decrees of Vatican II. Therefore, we must say the Catholic Church can teach heresy. A pope can teach heresy. Or we have to say the Catholic Church is a farce. Or we'd have to conclude that Paul VI was not a true pope. How can you say that? He's a heretic because he said Paul VI is not a true pope. Did you know that there were at least 48 anti-popes in the history of the Church? If you don't believe me, do it right when you get home tonight. If you have an old Catholic encyclopedia, look up the word papacy. You'll find the name of St. Peter and go right through the ages, and you will find the names of some of those popes written in italics or a little asterisk by the side of the name. And on the bottom of the page it'll say, these men were anti-popes, were not true popes. Why were they not true popes? There was an impediment in their election. You remember at one time there were 3 popes at the same time at one point in history? During the Great Western Schism, 3 popes at the same time. There can't be 3 popes at the same time. It's happened on different occasions when a pope has been put to death or martyred for 2 or 3 or 4 years. There was no pope. And finally another pope was elected. What did the Catholic Church do? Cease to exist during those 2 or 3 years? I remember reading some documentation by a Mexican priest whose name was Father Saenz on the background of Paul VI, and he has books, thick books written on the heresies of Vatican II and the heresies of Paul VI. He has a picture of Paul VI who is wearing not the cross worn by a bishop, but rather the ephod of Caiaphas, which is worn by the Jewish high priest when he officiates. It's a rectangular ornament with 12 stones on it that represents the 12 tribes of Israel. And this priest came to the conclusion that Paul VI was a false pope. And he compared him with a false pope whose name is Anacletus II. Now, who was Anacletus II? Anacletus II was a falsely converted Jew. The terminology used is a Marrano Jew. He infiltrated the church for the purpose of destroying the church. He did not destroy the church. He infiltrated. And for 8 years he sat on the chair of Peter at Rome as Pope Anacletus II, and he wasn't even a Catholic. Say, wow, that's wild. It happened. Well, Paul VI is dead. And now we have John Paul II. And he's so popular. He's going all over the world, and there are millions of people turning out, and they all like him. The Jews like him. The Protestants like him. He can go into a communist country. I heard he's going to Moscow. Now, there was a time when the Jews and the communists and the Protestants hated the Pope. But now all of a sudden it's different. As popular as he may be, we have a popular anti-Pope because he promotes Vatican II also. The only ones that are unpopular with him are those who refuse to change. I wonder what would happen if St. Francis of Assisi or St. John Vianney or Christ himself, if they appeared on the earth today and preached as they did when they were alive. They'd probably be told, you're going against Vatican II, Christ. Because Christ would not preach what's coming out of Vatican II. If Christ were alive today, he'd be re-crucified. He wasn't a social reformer, he was the Redeemer. And again, I know some of these things are extremely difficult for people to grasp. But as difficult as they may be, again I repeat, that doesn't mean that they're not true. If any of you have read the newspapers recently, or the Time magazine, or Look magazine, I'm sure you've been made aware of the fact that in South America, the Maryknoll missionaries, both priests and nuns, and other orders of priests, have been actually fighting side by side with communist guerrillas trying to overthrow anti-communist governments. I have pictures in my bulletins of priests that are now in places of power in communist countries. The scandal of our age. The forces of anti-God are not going to destroy the buildings that are owned by those who call themselves Catholics today. They're going to use those buildings for their own advantage. And again, today, the priesthood, the priests are talking like social reformers instead of talking like men who are supposed to be imitating Christ and talking about prayer and penance and sacrifice and reparation for sin and devotion to the Sacred Heart and the Rosary and the brown scapula and our Blessed Mother. That stuff is out. And now it's all this social reformation. So you have a choice, a decision to make tonight. And unfortunately, this is the way it's been by experience. Most people choose to ignore the things we've said. The response is very, very small. And humanly speaking, it's really heart-rending. But again, our daily duty is to do what we're doing. The rest is up to you and God. And if you go your way without looking into the things we've said, don't blame me if you end up in hell. Don't try standing before Christ and saying, there was no way that I could have known what was going on. No one ever told me. Again, most people don't care enough about their faith, evidently, to look into it. I remember some man coming up to me in St. Paul and he said, you know, I agree with what you're saying, but there's no way that I can live that way. Isn't that something? No way. Do you know that I've had priests, and I'm not the only one, I've had priests come to me and tell me that they knew their Mass was not a valid Mass, and they still say it. We have a priest living with us that's from Omaha. His name is Father Clement Kubesh. I don't know if any of you knew him. He's 76 years old. Been a priest for over 40 years. And when he stood up to his bishop in this diocese some years ago, when his bishop was putting the pressure on him, I read the letter the bishop wrote him. He says, you are the scandal of the diocese because you're not going along. Then the next day there's a picture of that bishop walking down the aisle with two mini-skirted girls carrying guitars. Who's the scandal of the diocese? And when Father Clement was put on the spot by that bishop, and Father said, I'm not going along. He said, if you don't go along, I'm going to throw you out. He says, well, that's your business. I am not going along. And the bishop told him to go pray over it. So he did. He came back and the bishop said, you made a decision? He says, that's right. I've decided to stay Catholic. I'm not going along with Vatican II. You know what happened to him? His pension was taken away, and he was just dropped like a hot potato. He decided to stand up for the truth, one amongst hundreds here in this diocese. Father Clement had an old priest friend that used to come to his house and weep every night because of what was going on. And in spite of the fact that man wept, he went right along also. It's really a tragedy. Instead of your priests and your bishops teaching you the truth, they are teaching you error. And that's why you're confused. I'm not telling you not to go to Mass. I'm telling you you don't have a Mass to go to. There's a difference. I'm not telling you to disobey the Pope. I'm telling you you don't have a Pope to obey. Our Lady said Rome will lose the faith and become the seat of Antichrist, and that's exactly what's happened. All of this error is coming out of the Vatican, out of the Chancery Office, and out of the pulpits. And that's why you're confused. And if you don't think we live in serious times, we have to go around like criminals, carrying our suitcases with Mass things in it, and say Mass in people's homes. Because if we go in the local church and say Mass, and they find out what we're doing, they'll throw us out physically. As a matter of fact, it's impossible to say Mass in most of those places because they don't have the books, they don't have altars, they have Protestant churches instead. Our Lady said, in the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. I believe that. How's it going to end? Nuclear war?